Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything from Pistons to the NBA draft and the Motor City Cruise.
And all right, guys, so we've got probably a little bit shorter of an episode for you guys today. We didn't get too many questions here ahead of time, which honestly makes a lot of sense to me. The Lions are pretty exciting right now. Lord knows the Tigers have something pretty magical and cool going on. I don't know why too many Pistons fans, or just not Pistons fans, but Detroit sports fans would be spending much time on the Pistons right now when training camp hasn't even started up. So I get it, guys. I get it. But you know what? We love the Pistons. We're talking about the Pistons here on this episode. It just might be a little bit shorter than our standard hour to hour and 10. We are going to get through all, looks like 3 of these pre-submitted questions. Guys, if you're watching with us live here, and apologies for going about an hour early. We just had the opportunity to do it. But regardless, if you're watching live, feel free to get your questions in on our live chat. We'll try to address those as well. And why don't we just open up with this? We actually do have a little bit of roster news, don't we?
Yeah, there was a little roster move announced today. The Pistons signed Lamar Stevens to a contract. It was so strange, and it kind of it's a fringe roster move, so not a big deal. But after Woj announced he was leaving ESPN last week, this sort of signified the changing of some things in NBA coverage to me, because this signing was actually announced by Lamar Stevens' agent and his agency, and then Omari Sankofa of the Free Press confirmed the report, said it was a training camp deal. I think our guy James Edwards also did the same as well. So, yeah, Lamar Stevens brought in on a training camp contract. Not sure any specifics beyond that, but he has played 203 career games, mostly for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So a little bit of an interesting connection there with JB Bickerstaff. Last season, he started in Boston and was traded at the deadline to the Memphis Grizzlies for Xavier Tillman. Shout out the Michigan State Spartans. But yeah, other than that, Stevens is like a 6'6" wing. We'll see if he's able to compete for that last roster spot, whatever it might be. If he ends up on a two-way, just competing in camp, getting waived and playing with the Crews, we'll see. But hey, at least we had a little piece of Pistons news when it's mainly football and baseball, like you mentioned, Wes.
Yeah, and I thought it was at least a little bit interesting, just in terms of the type of player that Stevens is, from what I can understand, what I've watched of him from, the times the Pistons have played the Cavs and the Grizzlies. But, a little bit more of a power wing, if you want to think about like a power forward, but smaller, in a way similar to Asar Thompson in that type of role. Just very physical, good athlete, not necessarily a shooter, not necessarily a, square you up from the perimeter and take you out of isolation type of player, but a good serviceable wing. Obviously, he's played quite a few games in the NBA in his 4-year career. So, I mean, it's at least interesting. With it being a training camp deal, you'd assume this is more of a Motor City Cruise signing, more so than a Pistons signing. But like you said, it's a great call out with the JB Bickerstaff connection. So, I guess if he really shows out in training camp, you never really know how it could go. They do have that open roster spot.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see if and how they're going to fill that, because I think we talked about this last week. There are 2 of 3 two-way spots taken up by Tosan Iwoma, who was with the team last year, and Dennis Jenkins, the guard who the Pistons signed as an undrafted free agent. We saw him in summer league and everything. But I'm pretty sure you don't unlock that third two-way spot until you have a full 15-man roster. So maybe that is some sort of incentive for the Pistons to fill that out. But I don't know. I can see them just going into training camp as is, leaving a little flexibility there. I remember last year, Stanley Amude wasn't, I believe he was on a training camp contract, and then he was given a two-way, like, right before the season started. He played well in preseason, which stories like that are always cool. So maybe we'll see something similar this year. And yeah, maybe Stevens is a name that'll fit that bill.
And just real quickly with that third two-way thing, I always thought that as well. I have recently heard, or not heard, but seen some things seen some reporting that makes me question it. I don't know. It's confusing how that rule is
It
written
is.
and what the coverage is on it. So maybe that's a thing, maybe not. I honestly have no idea. But
We'll talk to
notable
Keith Smith
regardless. Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah, we'll have to ask Keith Smith. He'll know. He'll know. Just quickly shout out to our guy here. Derek Brown says he's got about 20 deliveries left on his UPS truck, and he can't wait to finish it out by listening to the Pindown. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah,
we love that
you,
you're
Derek.
listening with us. When you get done, if we're still going, you got a question, we'll absolutely answer it. Throw it in. Appreciate you tuning in live as always. But let's start here. We wanted to, in the first few minutes of this episode, do a season preview for Simone Fontecchio and Tobias Harris. Pistons Talk, what up? What up, man? Happy to see you joining. So Blake, if you are still there and not frozen, let me ask you which one you want to start with, Simone Fontecchio or Tobias Harris. All right, he's probably gonna have to exit and come back in. But so why don't we just start with this? We'll get the conversation going with Simone Fontecchio. Pretty interesting season that he had last year. Here are his numbers. So overall, he was 10.5 points, 3.7 rebounds, 1.5 assists, one stock in 24.9 minutes per game. But we have to split that out, right? He spent a lot of time with Detroit, but also a lot of time with the Utah Jazz. So when he was in Utah last season, it was 8.9 points. He had 3.5 rebounds and 1.5 assists. Also one stock per game still. He slashed in Utah 45, 39, and 80, that being from the floor, 3-point line, and free throw line, respectively. Now in Detroit for 16 games where he started 9, so about half of these games in Detroit is what he started. It was 15.4 points, 4.4 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 1.2 stocks in about 30 minutes a night, slashing 48, 43, and 85. So he did take a pretty solid tick upwards. When he did come to Detroit, his minutes went up and his opportunity went up as well, which if we can rewind the clock a little bit, Blake and I, we did discuss that a little bit right after the trade. That was thankfully something that we did see. There was speculation that this was a guy in Utah that was slightly underutilized, and indeed we did end up seeing that play out in Detroit over that 16 games. What I think is kind of tricky about projecting Fontecchio now into this upcoming season is that there's a new coach, right? So JB Bickerstaff is obviously not Monty Williams. Monty Williams could never really decide or seem to figure out what he wanted to do with Simone Fontecchio in terms of his role within the rotation. He always and very consistently got close to that 30 minutes a night, at least to my memory. But at the same time, he was in and out of that starting lineup. So now with JB Bickerstaff, I think the question, Blake, is more, what is Fontecchio's role going to be night after night? I think we can pretty confidently say he's going to get a good chunk of minutes, right? But do you think that those minutes are coming with the starters? Are they coming more off the bench? And I mean, he shot about 12 field goal attempts per game with the Pistons last season. I'm not sure that's really going to continue here. So just curious, looking forward to next season, what do you what are we going to see out of Simone Fontecchio? What are you watching for him?
Yeah, and thanks for bearing with me, everyone, through my computer troubles. I do not know what just happened there, so thank you for bearing with me.
And of course, peek behind the curtains. But when we were getting ready for this show to start, Blake and I were complaining to each other about how much we hate when the computer just doesn't work right. I just had a bunch of computer issues on my own end. I had to purchase a new computer actually because my old one had gotten so bad. So we were just complaining for maybe 10 minutes before we even started the episode. And then lo and behold, your computer has some issues while we actually get recording. It was prophetic. We were just thinking ahead.
It really was. I should have knocked on on wood because like I just bought a new computer at the start of this year, and like my handful of month-old computer just decided to freeze and do nothing. So switch over to my work computer. So hopefully we're smooth sailing from here. But yeah, Simone Fontecchio, so I think he's going to have a strong role on the team, a heavy minute volume. But that said, we have a question coming up about really like mapping out rotation. So I won't get too much into it, but it gets a little tricky when you're trying to find minutes for Asar Thompson. Maybe you're trying to throw minutes to the rookie Ron Holland. You're trying to set up all these combinations, like not play Asar Thompson and Jalen Duren together. So I still see Fontecchio having a pretty big role on the team, and I expect it's weird because he's only entering his third year in the NBA, but he'll be 29 years old. He spent a lot of time overseas. So we could assume like he'll probably improve a bit, but he might be what he is at this point. And I mean, over the course of last season, he put up 5 3-point attempts per game in totality in his 16 games with Detroit. That was on 6.3 attempts. By the time he got here, the season was already gone. There were a ton of players moving in and out. So I don't think he'll see that high of volume, but I think he's going to be a high level shooter that can either be that catch and shoot guy on the corner, but he can also do a little bit off movement. Or if you put him on an angle to cut to a basket, I mean, he's not going to give you a ton, but I think he can do something, and he's not a total negative on defense. He's not an Asar Thompson by any means, but I think he'll give you effort out there and just be okay. Like he won't sink the ship and be a traffic cone defensively. So I think that helps you give him some more minutes. And I don't know. I just see him as like a 25-minute a game guy, maybe somewhere around what we want to see for Asar Thompson. And then you plug Fontecchio in to give you that shooting that the team so badly needs. And Derek Brown brought it up in the chat, but his contract is a steal. I think it's one of the best values in the NBA. Like Derek says here, the only issue is that it's not longer term. Would have loved to get a third year, but maybe this was a move by Fontecchio. He only wanted to be under team control for 2 years and either re-hit the market, go back overseas, whatever it is. So it's a tradable contract too, but I think for what he gives you, it's one of the best values in the NBA, even if it is shorter term.
Yeah, I think you and I are in lockstep here. I mean, in terms of the role that he's going to have, I guess if you have to make a comparison in a way, think of it as somewhere in between what he was with the Jazz his rookie year and early on last season, and where he ended up being in Detroit. So in Detroit, everything went up, right? His minutes per game go up, his shot attempts per game go up, his 3-point attempts per game go up. I think all of that will more or less follow through. I'm with you. I think he's going to be a starter, but I don't think he's getting 30 minutes a game. They have enough wings now where that wings that you want to give minutes to, which is a key thing here, because last year they really didn't. And Fontecchio is, last year he was the only guy on the roster at that wing or forward position that could shoot, play a little bit of defense, and was a decent ball mover. Okay, so they didn't have any other options. Now, I mean, at the minimum, you have Tobias Harris. You think maybe Asar Thompson can get closer there. If you think maybe Ron Holland can start to approach that offensively as well. I don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but those are still guys that are going to get minutes. But in this case, Tobias Harris clearly slots in the role above where Fontecchio is, and honestly, probably in the role that Fontecchio had in Detroit when he started games last season, which is a second or third option and a pretty high volume guy. So all that's to say, I'm expecting his minutes to go down like you kind of previewed, we both took the time to create a full rotation for this team for this episode. And I also had Fontecchio right at that 24, 25, 26 ish minutes per game mark. That said, I do think he's still probably the fourth ish option on the team when he's in the starting lineup, and if he's ever with any bench units, that only goes up. So I think that his shot attempts could still stay fairly high on a per minute basis, but those minutes just went down. So that's what I'm saying. My expectation somewhere in between what he did for Utah, where he's primarily off the bench, and then what he did in Detroit, where he really elevated his game and kind of showed out what the type of player he is and can be.
I mean, I think if you look at what he was for Utah last season before he was traded to Detroit, like that might just be what we're looking for. He averaged 23.2 minutes a game, put up 4.7 3-point attempts per game, and did that at a 39.1% clip. Like, and played in 50 games, started 34 of those. Like, honestly, I think that might be what we're looking at because he might not start. And even if he does start, maybe Asar Thompson takes a step forward. He's not in the starting lineup initially, and you throw him in. So, I mean, the nice thing about Fontecchio is I think you can plug and play him in really any lineup that you can throw out there, and he'll be a benefit. Like I feel like he's not really the guy that you're going to worry about in most 5-man groups that you're throwing out there.
So this is kind of interesting. I was able to find on Basketball Reference a his per game averages when his game minutes fell within a range of a range of minutes. So we're talking about Fontecchio being maybe like 25 ish minutes a night. So on games where he averaged 25.1 minutes per game, so this would be that 20 to 29 minute per game range, right? On those games, of all of the games he fell in that range, he averaged 25.1 minutes a night. So on those nights, 10.8 points, 3.8 rebounds, 1.7 assists, slashing his usuals. I think that's pretty spot on. That's exactly what I'm hoping to see. Like you said, whether he's a starter or not, I think that's ideally what you're going to get out of Fontecchio, a very efficient and consistent 11 points per game, decent amount of rebounds, and a solid ball movement. And then everybody needs that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. He's a perfect role player for the NBA right now, and it is incredible that the Pistons have him on the roster. I'm very excited for Fontecchio, even though it's like 11 points per game that I'm banking on.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this when talking through him. Like, I feel like Fontecchio is the archetype that you hope a lot of these like maybe mid late lottery like first round picks, even second rounder, like what you want them to be, these like wing archetype guys that show some flashes of shooting. Like Bobby Clintman has a little more size and like upside, I would say, but like if he turned into like what Fontecchio is doing, I think that would be a win for where you got him. So teams, all that to say, like teams look for players like this, and I think as long it's asking a lot, but like if he can shoot the way he did from three last year, both when he got to Detroit and when he was in Utah too, like I don't think you can really ask for much else. And even if he takes a little bit of a step back, I think that's fine too.
Yeah, I completely agree. So let's move on. Let's do Tobias Harris quickly here. So last season with the 76ers, played 70 games, 70 starts, averaged 17.2 points, 6.5 rebounds, 3.1 assists, 1.7 stocks in 33.8 minutes per game. He slashed 49, 35, and 89, that being field goal, 3-point line, and free throw line, respectively. So, very efficient scorer, not an incredible 3-point shooter, but pretty good volume and about league average percentage, good free throw shooter. What are you looking for out of Tobias Harris this year?
I feel like he really just needs to be that veteran presence that is able to go more often than not. Like looking at his past few seasons, he played 70 games, 74, 73. He's had 2 seasons in his career where he's played 82 games, one of those being in Detroit. So as long as he is available and is that guy who he averaged 17.2 points last year, like if he can be that guy that you can look to get a bucket when some of the younger guys are struggling, everyone else is having an off night, just get things going. I think that's what you need. And like playing with Cade will be interesting because I feel like Cade has had some slow starts in games. Like he kicks it on more often than not toward the end of the first half, in the second half, and can sometimes come out cold, which he normally always turns it on. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. But if Tobias can be that starter that you can look to for buckets right out of the gate, get you a quick 4, 6, 8 points, whatever it is, and really help lift up that starting group where you're going to have young players playing next to you, I feel like that's what you got to ask for. And if he can keep up that shooting as well, I mean, he's been league average or above the past, really like most of his career, other than early. So as long as he can do that as well, because he's going to be playing next to Jalen Duren, maybe sometimes next to Asar Thompson. So be that guy that they can look to for a shooter and just overall raise the floor when you're playing next to some of these guys who are still finding their way in this league.
Yeah, I thought Tobias Harris was actually a pretty savvy move out of Trajan Langdon, to bring in as a very consistent veteran. I mean, as you said, he plays a lot of games. He's usually pretty dependable in terms of injuries, but more than that, the type of offensive player that Tobias Harris is extremely valuable with a really ball dominant guard like Cade Cunningham. Tobias Harris is not the type of player that isolates a lot, that creates his own a lot. I guess not exactly to his credit, but he's not really a floor spacer either. So maybe that's not perfect. It's not like he's going to shoot 40% from three. He's about league average on good attempts for the position that he plays. But what Tobias Harris does really well is play off the catch. He's a very decisive offensive player. He knows his spots. He knows where he wants to get to. He knows where he's most effective. All right. I believe he's relatively good at getting to the free throw line. Let me just check that real quickly. Make sure I'm not wrong. But
3 attempts a game last
three
year.
attempts a game. That's very good for an off-ball forward like Tobias Harris. So he is solid. He is dependable. And he's very good at playing off guys that are a lot more ball dominant and still getting his. So not only is this helpful for Cade Cunningham, but you can envision this being helpful for Jaden Ivey. If it'll allow Jaden Ivey to ramp up his usage if he so earns the ability to do so. This won't get in the way of that. It won't hamper Tobias Harris and his production at all. So I really thought this was pretty effective, pretty savvy out of Langdon to do. The only thing that makes me a little concerned is if you pull up his basketball reference page and you just look out of the past 5 years, so the years that he's been in Philadelphia, they've all been fairly consistent. His first 2 years were over 19 points per game, and then it dropped. So this past season, and then 2 seasons ago, it was 17. Both times it was actually 17.2 points per game. In between that was 14.7. That was the first time in years. When was the last time? That was the first time
15,
since
16.
2015 and 2016 that Tobias Harris was under 15 points a night. And while he's not a old guy, he's only going to be 32. You might say that that's a reason to be concerned that he's going to drop off. I want to take this in a different direction. If you go and scroll down further on that same basketball reference page, you can see the position estimates. the 22-23 season was the most minutes Tobias Harris has played at the small forward position since 2014-2015. I think it would make a lot of sense that as Tobias Harris is getting older here, he was already not exactly the quickest guy in the world. He had already struggled at guarding more traditional threes, more traditional wings. The one season in Philadelphia where he played the majority of his minutes out at the three, out as a legitimate wing instead of a forward at that four position, he very much struggled. If the Pistons are going to lean into what they did last year, which I don't think that they are, but we don't know for sure that they're not. That is to say, if they're going to play Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren together, I think that is a big problem for Tobias Harris and the money that they put into his contract over the next few years.
Yeah, I think the question with him is like he's not like super up there. I still think he has some good basketball left in him, but he's not getting any younger, and it's just like, what if he falls off a cliff and that happens and you have to deal with it? Like, then you have $26 million a year for the next 2 seasons on your book that isn't giving you the value that you thought it would. I mean, that's a risk that you're going to take with any contract, especially adding someone at the stage of their career that Tobias is. Otherwise, I mean, his 3-point percentage did dip a bit last season. He went down in the season that you mentioned, Wes, where he averaged under 15 points a game. He still shot right next to 39% from three on 4.5 attempts. Then this past season, he went down to 35%, a bit over that on 3.7 attempts. So is that tapering off? Like, I believe league average was somewhere right around 36 last year. So it's not horrible, but I think you want him to be above average, especially if he's playing next to Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson at times. If Ivy is league average or below, like, you'd like to see him a little bit above that. So the main concern with him is like, what if what he was in the playoffs last year just carries over and his regular season play just totally drops down? I don't think that's the case, but I mean, it's something that could happen and a risk you take when you give out that contract that there probably aren't that many teams out there that are running to take on that money for the next 2 seasons if you are put in that situation.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not concerned about the age thing, especially because you really can't hedge against this. If you really do shift his minutes onto bigger forwards, I should say, instead of quicker wings, whatever he's losing athletically due to his age, it's not as big of a deal. He'll continue to become, he'll just be that old man strength kind of player for a little bit. And if that's what happens, then that's totally fine. 32, though, I think is by no means, he's got a lot of good basketball left. He's by no means like on a downturn. But if he does start to lose things athletically, you can hedge against that. You play him more at the four, and you definitely don't want him at the three, which is what every other team outside of the Sixers for that 1 year agreed and decided to do. The one thing I do want to stick on just here quickly before we move on and get into some of the questions for this week was just that, you bring up the floor spacing, and I want to be clear. When I said Tobias Harris is not a player I would call a floor spacer, that does not mean that he's detrimental to floor spacing. I think he helps with that. If you're a league average player in the front court, so league average being you're shooting around that 36% from three on good volume, which he is, 4 or more attempts per game. If you're that type of player in the front court, you are helping. You're not hurting. You're not making things worse. It's just not he's not Malik Beasley. He's not
He's
for an
not
extreme
standing in
example,
the
Steph
corner.
Curry.
Like,
Yeah, he's
and you don't
not
want
the
him to
guy
be.
that you're asking to space. You're asking other players to space. He's best used as a player who can shoot, but then can take advantage of the other spacing on the court while he's actively not hurting that other spacing on the court. So it's just, It's a little bit of nuance. You can think about this with Cade Cunningham as well. I would make that argument with Cade Cunningham as well, where Cade Cunningham about league average from three. Maybe he can get that up. Maybe he can't. I don't know. But if he's going to be 36, 37% and shoot like 6 attempts a night, that's great. That's all you really want, because you want him shooting those very difficult attempts from three, and you want him the rest of the time just every now and then shooting a catch and shoot thing. Like he's not a guy at any point, even if he shoots 40% from three, that you're going to stick out on the wing and tell him to space the floor. That's just not how those types of players are. That's not what you want Harris doing either. You want him ready on the catch to attack. And if the 3-point line is open and he's, got his rhythm for his catch and shoot three, then, go for it, right? Take the three, take the 4 or 5 a night. That's fine. That's great. But like his big value is the multitude of things he can do off the catch, not just that he can stand out there and shoot the three. So that was the only small point I wanted to make. I'll let you add on, and then we'll get into some questions here.
Oh no, I agree with that totally. And I mean, if in the starting lineup, like the only thing is who is your like would you consider Fontecchio a floor spacer?
Yeah, he's just the only guy I'm not 100% convinced is going to start, which makes me nervous
Right.
for exactly that reason. Yeah, Fontecchio is your catch and shoot guy. You want like at least 2/3 of his shot attempts to be catch and shoot threes every night. Like if he takes 10 shot attempts a night, you would love 6 of those to be threes. That would be
Yeah.
great.
Well, if
And you
it's
do not want him isolating and taking a guy with the step back three either. Like that's not his game. So yeah,
yeah.
he's a great example of the type of player you want for that role. Yeah, yeah,
Well, if it's even if Fontecchio's not in the lineup, if Ivy and Cade are out there, like just have them take a step too, and like have one of
sure.
them be a threat for just like standing there for a kick out when one of them is driving. So I think this is the year where a lot of guys are gonna have to prove things, and like that's a big area for a lot of these players. And with the young guys specifically, I think Cade, I mean, like you said, he's already shot pretty solidly okay from three. Ivy has been pretty average as well, but I think he can take a step up from there. And like, that's what we're looking for. If not, and not saying this about Cade, but if Jaden Ivy doesn't make growth as like a 3-point shooter, that's something you think about, because Asar Thompson probably isn't going to be that guy anytime soon. So who else is going to make up for that? So just a lot of steps need to be taken this year, which is a tall task to ask for. But I think we'll get the answer to those questions sooner rather than later, hopefully.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd completely agree. It's one of those like long term, right? If you're trying to project out, it would be fantastic if Cade and Ivy specifically could both be, like 38, 39% on catch and shoot threes alone, if you want to stratify that out. But in terms of this year, if you like just for the offense to survive and not be bottom 10, then league average is fine. Like you don't need them to be
Yeah.
to excel in that way, which I think is a good point to split out. Let's do this one just to stick on the shooting because it's kind of morbidly fun, I guess. Well, maybe not morbid because no one's dying, but it's definitely a sad question. Derek Brown says Asar Thompson, 22 air balls last season from three, over under 9 air balls from three this year, and I'm over. So go ahead.
Do heaves count? I'm just kidding. I'd go.
Oh,
I'd
we
go
can take
over.
those out.
I'd go over either way. It yeah, not saying that to like rag on Asar. Anyway, we all know like what he is as a 3-point shooter right now. Hopefully he takes a jump there, but man, did he have some bad misses last year. And like I love the guy. I was hopeful on his somewhat semblance of becoming a shooter coming into the draft, or
We'll forgive you for that, Blake. Don't
yeah,
worry.
or at
I
least
it's
having
okay.
a workable shot. But man, like yeah, some of the just what we saw last year didn't give me much optimism for that. I just think he needs to make some sort of improvement based on what he was last year. But if I had to guess over under here, I would go over, unfortunately, and it makes me sad to say that.
See, any chance I get, I have to give you a hard time for the shooting thing because I was wrong about literally everything else regarding Asar Thompson pre-draft, and you were right. You were absolutely right. But the one thing I have
Yeah.
over you was that he was not a good shooter. So I just, I got to keep hitting on it.
And the funny thing is, I was somewhat optimistic about Asar's shot because I was very pessimistic about Amends. And I just think like it's like I thought Asar was better off compared to his brother, but I think it's just both of them, and like I hope both of them take a jump, but um
Me too.
I don't know how likely like a considerable jump is, especially this early in their careers.
Yeah, and then, so to the question, what I would say is that Cade Cunningham's rookie year, he also had an oddly high number of air balls. I don't know if it was 22 from three, but it was more than zero, which really I thought was a shock, at least in the moment. And part of why it was so shocking was because everything in the lead up to the jump shot usually looked pretty good. His feet weren't perfect, but they weren't out of control. There wasn't way too much movement in his body as he was bringing the ball up, and his follow through looked good. His left hand looked fine when it was guiding the ball forwards. Like there wasn't anything mechanically awful, like just god awful and concerning about that shot. Yet he still had the air balls. And then obviously now, as time's gone on, though, did he even airball a three that wasn't a heave last year? I'm not sure that he did. I can't think of one off the top of my head. I'm sure he did one or two. Most guys do, but certainly not an unusually high amount. The thing with the SAR is that it wasn't just the 22 air balls that were concerning. It was that the feet were all over the place.
Everything
The
else too.
ball was moving every which way as it went up. His left hand was very inconsistent on what it did. There's no right or wrong answer here with NBA athletes, but it's like a coin flip if he takes his left hand off the ball early or if he leaves it there to guide it through all the way. His follow through would sometimes drift one way, left or right, just depending on, I guess, how he was feeling that day. And the worst part of all of it was that the form itself was very, very mechanical. So he cannot shoot off the dribble because it is just so stiff. You cannot be a stiff shooter and shoot off movement, which I would venture to guess that a decent amount of these air balls are off of not pure movement where he's curling off a screen or anything like that, but just simple relocations where his feet, his hips got all out of whack. And then, you see the air ball at the end of it. So my point is to have him decrease the air balls by over half would be, a very, very large decrease for a guy that it's not just the end result that was the problem. It was everything in the process. And that's why that's why he shot 18% from three last year. That's what it is. That's why it's a project. That's all.
And that's not necessarily like obviously you want him to make these shots, but I think it's another problem if he gets scared to take them and then is just completely left out there
And that
like
could have fed into this too, right? I mean, that's
yeah,
a good point.
100%.
If you're afraid to shoot and then you pop one up late, like, yeah, it's kind of a wild shot and it could be an airball.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, just I can't imagine like the mind games these young players go through, and especially if you're working through something like this, like I feel like the worst thing that can happen is just you being scared to take threes, jumpers, whatever it might be. And I don't want Asar to get to that point. I was impressed with how he continued to take them last year, even if he saw one miss so horribly like before, which yes, you have to debate it against like, do you want him to put up these shots you probably know aren't going in if it's a just like you need to make buckets, obviously, but I just hope he doesn't get in a situation where he second guesses himself when he gets a really good look.
Yeah, it's such a fine line for these guys to walk, for Asar Thompson specifically, because just practically speaking, if he's wide open, but you still have more than like 10 or 12 seconds on the shot clock, he really probably shouldn't shoot the shot anyway. I would much prefer him actually
Yeah.
drive to the hoop and try to make a play that way if he's legitimately wide open, right? If they're ignoring him, eat up the space and try to make a play at the rim or on a kick out because you've got time to do it. But, at the same time, like you said, you can't be afraid to put it up if there's 9 seconds left on the shot clock, you're wide open out on the wing and you're in rhythm on the catch, like put it up. You should not hesitate. And that's just, especially for a young guy like this, and he doesn't have a lot of NBA experience, that is such a thin line. It is so difficult. So difficult.
Yeah, 100%. I hope that didn't seem like it was the case, at least to me, for Asar last year, and I just hope it doesn't turn into that.
All right, let's get into this fun question here from Gregory 1988. He was just asking for a suggestion on how we would outline a rotation. So he says, can you outline how you would envision the Pistons substituting players for a full 48 minutes? And Blake, we had some fun with this one. I'm looking on the doc now. Both of us went out split by quarter and by minutes for the substitution, when which players, which lineups would go in, who'd come out, and then totaled up at the very end how many minutes each player was getting. You actually took it a step further than me. You pulled up the average minutes per game of all these players from last year too.
Hey, it's for both of us to reference.
I mean, I think it's interesting, right? Because now we can bring up the conversation of, does that even matter? It was a different coach, right? I mean,
right.
There's so much depth to go in here. I'm excited to see where you're going to take it, but let's just first give us your rotation. What's going on? You know what? Here, let's do it this way. Quarter by quarter. You give your first quarter, I'll give mine, and we'll continue on down that way. So in quarter one, how are you breaking out the minutes?
Okay, I like this because I was wondering how we were going to do it. I feel like I was getting a little jumbled working my way through it myself, so I didn't want to confuse everyone. So hopefully it works. And I also thought, as I was doing this, like, man, how difficult does it have to be a coach? Because I'm sure you could
Oh
even
my God, I know.
plot all this out, and then when the game happens, like someone gets into foul trouble or something happens, and it just throws everything for a loop. So I would love to know like what coaches' processes are for stuff like
That's
this.
a fantastic point too, because that was something I wanted to bring up at the end of this.
Yeah.
Was like, this rotation's great. Yes, this is what I would do under an ideal setting, but like at the same time, like you said, foul trouble, injuries, and then even what if, like, I don't know, Ivy's just got an off night. Like, he's not getting all the minutes I'm going to give him in this if he's legitimately off, right? Like, ideally, there's going to be flexibility night to night with these things. So it's fun to talk about. And it was I had a great time putting this all together. But then, at the same time, have to understand, like, it's a good coach it's going to be flexible. But we're not good coaches, so we can be rigid here.
As we get to the fourth quarter, I sort of cheated a little bit, and there were a few spots where I was like, okay, this spot could be either like one of two players, like whoever's playing well or isn't in foul trouble, whatever. So in the first quarter, who I'm rolling out for starters, which we don't know if this is going to be the case, but Cade, Ivy, Fontecchio, Tobias Harris, and Jalen Duren. I'm having that group go until the 6-minute mark. And then I'm just going to say the 5 group because I'm going to get confused. So I'm subbing in and out. So at the 6-minute mark, I'm putting in Cade, Malik Beasley, Asar Thompson, Tobias Harris, Isaiah Stewart. I'm letting that group go until about the 2-minute mark. Then I'm taking out Cade and Tobias. So that would leave me with Jaden Ivey, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., Asar Thompson, and Isaiah Stewart.
You and I are not all that far off, although it's funny, we counted in different directions. I was counting like 4 minutes into the quarter, I'm going to make a sub. 6 minutes into the quarter, I'm going to make a sub. And then you were going to time on the clock. So it's just kind of funny how it's the same thing. We're getting the same information. We just instinctively did a different direction. Sorry, excuse me, everybody. The math is why I did it the other way, because then I could look at it and go, okay, they got 10 minutes there, they got 8 minutes, and then just kind of go down that way. Yeah, I was trying to cheat already for myself on the math, but anyway, we're not that far off. You and I, we've got the same starting lineup. I was doing a really early sub, so after about 4 minutes, I was just sending in Malik Beasley for Jaden Ivey. It seems like you and I are both going to stagger Ivy and Cade at that point guard spot. So I thought it'd be valuable here to get Ivy out early, get him some wind, and then give him a bigger section here in a little bit later on in the quarter to close it, and then going into quarter two. After that, so another couple minutes will pass. Now we're 6 minutes in to the quarter. I will pull Tobias Harris and Jalen Duren out, subbing in Asar Thompson and Isaiah Stewart. So for that lineup, we have Cade, Beasley, Tech, Asar, Stu. And then after 10 minutes in the quarter have passed, only 2 minutes left, we'll put Ivy back in for Cade Cunningham and Tim Hardaway Jr. in for Simone Fontecchio. So closing out the quarter with Ivy, Beasley, THJ, Asar Thompson, and Isaiah Stewart. That group's going to start the second quarter for me as well. So I'd subbed a little bit earlier, but honestly, we are not all that far off here. I think, and this will be a trend, just looking at us, I think I'm going to have comparatively more subs than you do. But, I mean, at the same time, we even ended with the exact same quarter lineup.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at it now. We ended quarter one and started quarter two off the exact same way.
Okay. So yeah, the only difference I made from my lineup that was ending quarter one, which was Ivy, Malik Beasley, THJ, Asar, and Stu,
Oh, yeah, I see.
is I figured. So this was what was fun about like actually mapping it out like this, is because we can say like Ron Holland is going to play, or like Marcus Sasser has a role a few minutes here and there, but this makes you like really think about where they're going to get them, and like are there minutes for some of these guys? Like to start quarter two, this was like, okay, here's where I'm going to throw Ron Holland some minutes. So I just subbed in Ron Holland for Malik Beasley. You can do it for Tim Hardaway or Asar if Asar is in foul trouble, whatever it might be. So to start the second quarter, I had Jaden Ivey still in there as the lead ball handler, Tim Hardaway Jr., Ron Holland, Asar, and Isaiah Stewart. And then I was gonna bring Cade back in around the 9 to 10 minute mark. So have Cade, Tim Hardaway Jr., bring back in Simone Fontecchio, leave Ron Holland in there for a little bit more, and Isaiah Stewart. And then at the 5 to 6 minute mark, this would be my group to close out the first half. Cade, Ivy, Fontecchio, Harris, and Duren. I included here just like a note at this point, like you're likely dealing with one or maybe two guys that have a couple fouls. So you're going to have to filter in and out Asar Thompson, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway, maybe Ron Holland if you're looking for some spot minutes, or maybe here's when Marcus Sasser comes in because Cater Ivy is in foul trouble and the other one needs a rest. So I think that one can go a lot of different ways, but that's how I'd have it if ideally everyone is healthy and no one is in foul trouble, which is rarely the case.
I felt the same kind of pull, honestly, towards more of a short rotation. And I think that may be just a part of staggering Cade and Ivy so dramatically like this. Where you feel like you would usually put in, a backup point guard, it's actually just you've got to finagle Jaden Ivey to get back over to that spot, or put Cade back in. So I was also feeling kind of a crunch there. It's interesting though, because throughout the entire exercise, the one thing I was trying to keep in mind most often was 4 or 5 man pairings that I thought were very valuable and very important for this team to use frequently. So for example, I got Ron Holland in the second quarter as well. He didn't start the second quarter, so I started the second quarter the same way I ended quarter one with Ivy, Beasley, THJ, Asar, and Stewart. But after about 4 minutes, subbing in Ron Holland for THJ. So this is kind of the best ish case scenario in terms of floor spacing with Asar and Holland out there together for a short stint. It's not going to be all that long, just a couple of minutes, but you've got THJ who's a gunner. He gets him up very very quickly and can get hot really quickly, so you have to guard him. Stewart obviously is a good shooter at that 5 position. And then Jaden Ivey, I mean, if he can take a modest step forward looking at league average, that really helps you out there. So kind of helping out Ron Holland and Asar Thompson in that way. And then same thing, after a couple of minutes, we're going to get Cade back in the game for Ivy, leave in THJ, leave in Ron Holland, but now pull in Tobias Harris and Jalen Duren. So again, we've got some Ron Holland, Jalen Duren minutes, which may not be absolutely ideal. You still have Holland with the non-shooter, just like he was with Asar, but you're kind of balancing it back out again with other actually positive shooters on the floor, even if Ron Holland isn't a good shooter by any stretch of the imagination. And then ending quarter two, we're going to get the starters back in. So again, once about 8 minutes have passed, so the starters will get a 4-minute stretch here at the end. Ivy's back in, Tech is back in, and rolling back with Harrison Duren in the front court to get into quarter two. But those like 5-man, 4-man units, they repeat a lot. Just looking back at what I did, they repeat a lot.
Well, something I had a difficult time with going through this was like, are there going to be points where Asar and Duren are going to have to play together? Like,
I didn't. I did it. I did it. I found a way, and I gotta be honest, it wasn't all that hard. I really did.
Okay.
And the funniest part of this is that I came into it thinking, okay, they're probably going to overlap for a couple of minutes, and I'm going to have to make sure that I find a way to make that work. And then it just didn't happen.
Yeah, I got myself into a little bit of trouble, I think, in the second half, and like again, just who is going to be going that night. But I don't know. I feel like there are going to be points where it's going to happen, but hopefully it's not like long stretches or often or whatever it is. Or Asar is magically a league average 3-point shooter, which he won't be, but.
Yeah, if you got the magic pixie dust to make that one happen, please, by all means, get that to Detroit expeditiously.
I don't, but apparently Fred Vincent does. So we'll see what's going on there. But in the so going into the second half, had my starters in to kick it off: Cade, Ivy, Simone, Tobias, and Jalen Duren. Keep that group in until the 8-minute mark, then stagger out Ivy. So bring in Malik Beasley and Asar. So Cade, Beasley, Asar, Tobias, and Stewart. And then keep that group in until the 3 to 4 minute mark. Then start to give Cade his rest going into the fourth quarter and hopefully a long stretch closing out the game. So to close the third quarter, I'd have Ivy, Beasley, just throw a handful of minutes to Ron Holland there to close out the third, and then round it out with Asar and Isaiah Stewart.
So I have to say, I know I'm not going to love your fourth quarter here, but just based on what we've talked about so far, like I think you did a much better job than I did at making this. I don't want to say simple, but there's a lot less complexity. There's a lot less moving parts. There are fewer subs, and all of the individual lineups, all of those rotations, they make a lot of sense. I think you and I were trying for the exact same things. You and I both are the total minutes for all these players ended up being roughly the same, within maybe 5-ish minutes of each other with every single one of these guys. So you and I, clearly we had similar goals here, but you were able to accomplish it much more efficiently than I was able to do. I mean, I had 4 sub rotations in every quarter but the fourth. And that is, I mean, that's not necessarily a problem. I have personally played in rotations like that. Like, I don't think it's a challenge to for a player to get a rhythm in 4 or 5 minutes of a stretch. That's usually okay. But just from a coaching standpoint, right? Like, you need dead balls to get the subs in. And if you
Hmm.
can minimize the actual rotations that you need to do, you're much more likely to achieve your goal coming into the game, whatever you wanted to do rotationally. So I think you did a much better job here than I did. Just looking it over for the simplicity of the roster movements, you know.
Well, thank you, but I think the wheels might have fell off a bit for me in the fourth. I'm already looking at it, saying like there are a couple of changes I want to
Yeah.
make. It was just like another thing I was thinking about is like, am I playing Jaden Ivey too much? Because it's kind of hard when you're starting him, but then also wanting him to spend a lot of time as the lead ball handler in the second unit. I what I did, and I think the way I got myself into trouble in the fourth is just trying to finagle Jaden Ivey around to a mixture of playing alongside Cade with the starting group, but also playing as the lead guard in the second unit too.
So let's get to the fourth real quickly before we move on. I'll just read off my quarter three so we do it. I'm gonna try, guys. I'm gonna try to find a way to get these rotations somewhere into our show notes on the podcast, just
DBB
so
comments.
yeah, maybe in the comments, something
Oh,
like that. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to see what I can do so you guys have access to this too, because I'm sure listening to us talk through all of this is a little bit confusing.
yeah, I was like, how are
But
we gonna do this?
yeah, I was too, but
It's
it's
fun
fun,
though.
so it's worth figuring it out. But for quarter three, I had starting off Ivy, Cade, Ivy, Tech, Harris, Duran. My next sub rotation, Cade, THJ, Tech, Harris, Duran. Next rotation, Cade, THJ, Holland, Harris, Stu. And then closing out that quarter with Ivy, Beasley, Holland, Asar, and Stewart. But let's go into the fourth quarter here because I think you and I had one fundamental, like, different strategy or approach that I think is going to be interesting to talk through. So what did you do in quarter four? We both only sub 3 times.
Okay, so I started with I pulled the only difference from my closers in the third was I pulled Ron Holland. So started the fourth quarter with Ivy, Malik Beasley, THJ, Asar, and Stewart. So this is kind of my group to get Cade through that last rest period. So at 10 minutes, or whenever you can get the sub, bring Cade back in. So then I had Cade, pick your floor spacer of Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr., Asar, Harris, and Duran. I really don't like this lineup now that I'm like thinking about it more and reading it out loud. But the reason I put Asar there is because I was trying to get him to 25 minutes a game, honestly. And I wanted to close with my starting group. So I think, like, with what I have here, I've had Simone Fontecchio out for almost a full quarter plus at this point. So you could just simply switch Fontecchio with Asar in that lineup to give you extra spacing. And he's good, likely to go the last 5 to 6 minutes. Um, and then just like close it out with that starting group: Cade, Ivy, Fontecchio, Harris, and Duran. But that said, like if someone else is hot, like Malik Beasley can't miss, like he's going to be playing those minutes too. So a lot of things are going to be different there, but that's how I mapped it out just for the sake of this exercise.
So the interesting point and where I think you and I ended up disagreeing the most here in quarter four, I think it goes back to our approach coming into this because I had a very specific idea. I had two players that I really wanted to backload. I wanted Cade Cunningham and Tobias Harris playing more minutes in the second half than they played in the first. All right. And this pops up in the fourth quarter as well. I had Cade and Harris in the game for the entire fourth quarter. And both of those guys also really only sit for 4 minutes in the second half. So it's much more loose, free flowing in the first half. In the second half, get down to business. I want those two guys out on the floor as often as possible. And then I think just kind of as a natural branch off of that. So if Cade and Harris are both playing in the fourth quarter the entire time, I think it's pretty important to now in crunch time, right? It's not quite closing lineup time, but we're getting to the point in the game where if it's all gone well, we're locking down, we're trying to close it out, and I think the defense is pretty important at this point. So
Mhm.
I had Asar Thompson and subsequently Isaiah Stewart playing the first 8 minutes of the fourth quarter, leaving only 4 minutes of a closing lineup for our starting five, which was again Cade, Ivy, Tech, Harris, Duran. So in the end, Jalen Duran did not get a ton of second half minutes. To be honest with you, I thought this was the one area in my rotation where it was like I struggled on who to pick for that closing lineup. My instinct initially was to have Stewart in the entire fourth quarter as well, just to have that switchable big out at the five spot if you're not playing, Joel Embiid or someone like that. So I struggled with that, and I made a mental note that if Stu's hot in the fourth quarter and he's playing his tail off, then those are not Duran's minutes anymore in that closing unit. So yeah, I just thought it was really interesting with just because I really wanted to backload those two guys. We ended up getting very different fourth quarter minutes when earlier, through 1, 2, 3 quarters, we were actually pretty similar, all things considered.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I mean, I could have like I think where the main difference is I had Cade like coming back in, playing 10 minutes in the first quarter, coming back in around the 10-minute mark in the second quarter and finishing it out. So I think you can definitely get by, hopefully. And this also gives Ivy a little bit more run too, like waiting to bring Cade back in until like the 6, 7 minute mark in the second quarter. So that gives him his one, not long, but longest rest of the night. And then having him play the entire fourth quarter, like you mentioned as well. And yeah, it's just like it's all game flow dependent too. Like if it's a close game or the Pistons are trailing by like 5 to 10 heading into the fourth, I could see Cade being in there right away just so you can try to like make that push to make things interesting and not be more up against the wall by the time Cade comes in later on. So yeah, I feel like you could like steer this a lot of different ways and you can talk me into it as well, but I think I like what we both had overall. I definitely want to tweak mine a little bit, but happy where it netted out.
I mean, I think we've discussed ad nauseum at this point the practical issues with Asar Thompson and Jalen Duren out on the floor at the same time. So all I'd say with that, I think my bigger issue with that lineup there that you were using in the fourth quarter with Cade, Beasley, Asar, Harris, and Duren isn't necessarily that it popped up. I think you're right. Like it's very possible that that is something that happens, if not every game, then every now and then. Even though I was able to do it, in all fairness, I was probably only able to do it because I subbed so dang much and you didn't, right? So just because of that flexibility that I was able to artificially give myself, that might not be something that actually happens in a game. So I'm not 100% against like a couple minutes of that pairing being out on the floor together. What I'm very much against would be that pairing getting minutes together in the fourth quarter. So if
Yeah.
this is something that like pops in quarter one, quarter two, I think I'm far more open to it. I'm far more sympathetic to like, hey, my hands are tied. We had to do it. It's just what it is. So these guys can get their minutes and develop, and we're going to do our best. Maybe even that's a lineup where you stick out Beasley and THJ together in the
Hmm.
backcourt with Asar Harris and Duran in the front court, and just say, hey, Asar Thompson, you're supposed to be a guy that can initiate some offense on a very small level. Let's see if it works. Let's see if it happens.
Interesting.
Like I don't think he can, but I'm down to explore it early in the game if that makes
Yeah.
sense. But in the fourth quarter, when like it's kind of crunch time and the pressure's on, and not only does Asar Thompson and Duren being in mean that we don't have floor spacing, but you also pulled out Isaiah Stewart, who's your only plus front court defender outside of Asar Thompson, who's still in. So like your backcourt's got weak defenders. Tobias Harris is not a good defender. Asar Thompson's a very good defender, and then you just pulled your second halfway decent defender for Duren, who's, as we know, not a good defender. I don't know. I think that makes me nervous in the fourth quarter more than anywhere else. So that would be my one bigger note when I said that I had a disagreement with your quarter four. That's what it was. It was just using it then, not that it existed at all.
Yeah, that's very fair. It does work if it's a blowout though, in either direction.
Anything goes in a blowout, right?
Yeah.
If they're in a blowout, like get Ivy, Holland, and Asar,
Lamar
and
Stevens
Duren
will
out
be
there.
in the game.
He might. That is his time
Lamar
to shine.
Stevens is a good player. I didn't mean that in a bad way.
Well, and it's funny because I think Bryce tweeted this. Bryce Simon tweeted this out of Motor City Hoops that Lamar Stevens like tore up the Pistons in that one game that Grizzlies blew out the Pistons. And so that's his time to shine. That's what he does.
Well, when the Pistons were setting the record for like the most players to enter a game last year, the Grizzlies were simultaneously doing the same thing. So they were like fighting back and forth.
The Wizards too, weren't they?
Probably, but yeah, the Grizzlies with all like the injuries they had, like I'm pretty sure they were at or past 30 unique players over last season, just like the Pistons were too.
All right, guys, and I do quick apology. We very much underestimated how long it would take to get through this lineup thing. Yeah, that was meaty. So we're going to do these last two questions very quickly so that we can get you guys out in a reasonable amount of time here. But before we do, why don't we just read off the minutes that each of these guys in our rotation are going to play? I'll go first. I think honestly, looking at this, there were some that might be a little surprising, but I don't think anything should stand out all that much. So Cade was at 36 minutes a night, Ivy 28, Simone Fontecchio 24 as a starter, Harris 32, Duren at 22 as a starter, Beasley then with 20, THJ 14, Ron Holland with a nice 10-minute stretch, and then Asar Thompson with 24 and Isaiah Stewart with 26. So basically the four players of Tech, Duren, Asar, and Stewart, all right around a same or a similar minute load. I kind of ended up leaning to Asar and Stewart, which I found a little bit shocking given how much I like Simone Fontecchio. But no, I don't think anything is too nuts there. Do you?
No, not at all. I mean, and like Gregoire, who asked this question in the DVB comments, he had a 9-man rotation that didn't have Ron Holland. So I think like, even though some of these minute totals might seem a little low, there are going to be injuries there. The roster might be used in ways we don't necessarily think it is. And if Ron Holland doesn't play out of the gate, that's more minutes for Asar, whoever it might be. Pick your poison. So just
I always put it this way. I bring this up to Bryce pretty frequently, but like if you're gonna have a 9-man rotation, then okay, I get it. But the Pistons weren't a great team last year. They're probably not a great team this year. So I wonder why they would do a 9-man rotation. So if you're gonna do a 10-man rotation, which I've heard an argument for, Ron Holland to not be included in, and I get it, right? Marcus Sasser is solid, Paul Reed is solid. So if you want to go that direction, I understand. But at the same time, you have Cade, Ivy, Harris, Duren, Asar, Fontecchio, Beasley, Stewart, and THJ. That's 9. And the only 3 other guys that could possibly get the minutes then at this point is Holland, who you picked 5, Sasser, or Paul Reed. Like it seems like you're probably going to get some spot Ron Holland minutes.
Yeah. And,
unless they go 9-man, which would be a shock for a terrible team.
and someone
Not
or
terrible. Bad team. Sorry. That was too
no,
negative. My
no,
bad.
you're
My bad.
you're
My bad.
good. I was just gonna say, and someone or someone's is probably gonna be traded at some point. So there you go as
Yep, that
well.
too.
This stuff is going to change, but just for my minutes, and I'll rattle off like just how many minutes these guys played last year, so you can compare it. So for Cade, I had him around 37, 38 minutes a game. You can bump that down a bit to like 35, 36, and that would be fine as well. Cade averaged 33 and a half minutes a game last year. For Ivy, I had 29 to 30. He was at 28.8 minutes a game last year. Tobias, I had between 29 and 30 as well. He averaged 33.8 minutes a game last year with the Sixers. Jalen Duren, I had around 24 to 25 minutes. He averaged 29 minutes a game last year. Asar, 25 to 26. He averaged 25.1 last year. Simone, 25 to 26 minutes a game. He averaged 30.3 minutes just in his 16 games played with the Pistons last year. Isaiah Stewart, I had around 23 to 24. He averaged 30.9 minutes a game. Beasley 21 to 22. He was at 29.6 minutes a game in Milwaukee last year. THJ, I had around 15 to 16 minutes for this year, and he was at 26.8 last year in Dallas. Ron Holland, I rounded out with 7 to 8. Maybe it gets to 10 minutes per game. And obviously, his first year, he played crazy minutes in the G League last year. So we'll see where that's to come. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we were pretty aligned there. And even when you look at what these guys played last year, it it's fairly spot on. I mean, dropping Duran's minutes a little bit, but I think if he takes a step up defensively, like that can go back up as well. I think there's a big drop off with Stu as well, but it's also just like you brought in some players to hopefully make things easier for these guys and not take on so much.
All right, let's get through these next ones very quickly so we can get out of here and let you guys go. We got one fun one and then one kind of weird one. This is from Buzzard Beater. Says ESPN recently came out with their futures rankings and listed Detroit at number 30, which would be last in the league. Could you attempt to make a case for how they're determining market and why that would matter? I'll let you go first.
I did not see this article. So what is like it mean by futures? Like
Yeah, I'll be honest. I couldn't find this either. I assume that this must be some power ranking that's kind of taking into account the young players on the roster, future cap flexibility, and then
I see.
also whatever determination of market that they are discussing. And this is from Cross-Eyed, who thankfully was able to find this in the DVB comments. He says, for market, what they used is the following definition. So market was worth 8.3% of their score. Of course, they're accurate in their predictive model down to that tenth of a decimal point, which they're just that good at ESPN with their stats on the subjective number. But the definition is appeal to future acquisitions based on team quality, franchise reputation, city's desirability as a destination, market size, taxes, business and entertainment opportunities, arena quality, and fans. So that is what they were using for market, and it just will never. It will endlessly crack me up. The 8.3% of their power ranking score was calculated using market. That will
W-
never fail to make me laugh.
Well, yeah, like I mean, just off the cuff, I like Detroit has never appealed to free agents as a destination, so I'm not shocked they scored lowly in this. And also, what like city's desirability, like you're not going to find a bigger fan of Detroit than me, but guys would much rather go to LA, New York, Miami. I understand. But Wes, you're the economics guy. I'm gonna let you run with this one because the other stuff and how they're factoring this is like over my head a bit. I'm not shocked Detroit was at the bottom of it, but interested to see if you have any thoughts on it.
Nothing too deep. As I said, the 8.3 is going to crack me up for a very long time. They clearly created and quantified some very subjective things here, like appeal to future acquisitions based on team quality. How do you put a number to that? Yet apparently
You have
they
to
were able
ask
to figure
people,
out a
like,
way. I mean, I guess, but even now we're going to get into some survey biases that we can talk about and break down. Like, there's really no good way to do what they're saying that they did. So the fact that they like created a model to then generate these power rankings, and that this conception of quote unquote market value is only 8.3% of that predictive model. That means that it's just very funny to me that they attempted to do this. They made a power ranking. They made some sort of linear regression to do it, and then 8.3% of it is also this like unquantifiable thing. But anyway,
so
on a
what's the
less like
rest of it?
mathy note, I don't know.
I
I
need to
couldn't
read
find
this
it. I
article.
tried.
Sorry.
I'm gonna
I
keep looking. Yeah, I'm
have
gonna
too
keep
many
looking.
questions.
But on a less mathy note, the Pistons are right now ranked as the 23rd most valuable team in the NBA. Their valuation, just in terms of like ownership valuation, is $3.08 billion. Naturally, that's not what the team would actually get if Tom Gores decided to sell all of his shares. The value then would probably go up because then you get the bidding war and dot 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 dot. But in terms of just how the team itself is valued, it's kind of right in that cluster with Portland, OKC, Charlotte, Milwaukee. Kind of makes sense that that's where Detroit Pistons would be located. I only bring that up to say that the actual like market valuation and business earning potentials apparently is part of what ESPN used in their market calculation here. And so the Pistons being 23rd, which is notably not 30th, means that all of these other subjective things like franchise reputation, desirability of a destination, fans, just fans, arena quality, which again, subjective, all of those things. Clearly, ESPN's writers ranked it down lower than 23rd because you'd otherwise expect to see it closer to 23. So again, just goes to say that they quantified something that is very difficult to put a number to, and ran with it with to the 10th decimal place accuracy. ESPN, everybody.
Oh gosh, yeah. And I mean, shout out to Cross-eyed who pulled that information for
Yes,
us.
because I would have had nothing if not for what he was able to pull up there. So big shout out to.
Y- Yeah. Also mentioned just that it's cold and we have a
Yeah.
state income tax as well, so that didn't help. But like, hey, I think the Pistons rep isn't great as of late. Like, hopefully Trajan Langdon and co are changing that. It seems to me like they are, but like it's a historic
Hopefully.
franchise. I'd say it has a better reputation than like a decent amount of other ones. So I don't know. We can just throw this one away.
Yeah, I agree. Weird power rankings from
I
ESPN
still
there.
got to dig into it. I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep looking to see if I could find it. If for nothing else other than the comedy, I want to read more about their methodology because that was hilarious. Anyway, let's end on a fun one here. Says this is from Michigan Dragons in the comments. Says if you wanted to get a jersey to represent one of the new coaches, what number would you use?
Um, I don't know if this counts because he's not a new coach, but I would get a Jarrett Jack. Like, what was he, number 3 jersey? What
Oh,
was
that
he
is a
number?
great call. Yeah,
Um,
get like the Nets jersey for Jarrett Jack.
Yeah,
That'd
or
be a
even just
power
make
move.
a. Oh, it looks like he was number 1 with Okay, he was number 3 at Georgia Tech, so that was what I was thinking of, and he was different things through his NBA career. But I think a custom Jarrett Jack Pistons jersey would be pretty cool. But yeah, shout out to Revken who did some research for us here too in the DBB
Mhm.
comments. He said the only time numbers get associated with coaches is when a jersey is retired to honor them, and then the number used can vary. And the Pistons actually had this because Chuck Daly had the number 2 retired for the 2 titles he led the Pistons to. And then when Cade Cunningham was drafted and he wore number 2, he asked Chuck Daly's family if he could wear that number, which I still think is a cool story. I'm not sure if there are any other similar like coaches around the league that have that as well, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like JB Bickerstaff went into coaching pretty early. Like I have to look up his playing career because like I'm curious what number he wore now.
So I had a different answer, but I feel like getting a Jarrett Jack jersey is the right answer, especially if he overlapped at all with LeBron James
Or
in
Luke
Cleveland.
Walton. Luke Walton.
Or Luke Walton. Yeah, or Luke Walton when he played. But those like wine 2000s Cavs jerseys, I loved those so much when I was younger. So if there's a Jarrett Jack jersey of that, I absolutely would be purchasing it if I wanted to get a coach jersey. My initial instinct with this was I was thinking with JB Bickerstaff. If I wanted a JB Bickerstaff jersey, I'd get like number 54 or something. Like he just feels like a 54. I don't know. He gives me like the big man, tough, like I'm gonna get a high number in the 50s kind of vibe. I don't know why. He just gives me the vibe.
It looks like, so I just looked it up, and his playing career was only in college, where he played at Oregon State and Minnesota. And I found a picture on Google Images from a Denver Post article, and it looks like he wore number 32 for Oregon State. And then it looks like he might have wore number 1 for Minnesota. So all
Good
over
guard numbers. Yeah.
all over the place. But yeah, I love for some reason with the Pistons uniforms, I think the like bigger numbers actually look better on the jersey for some reason. I don't know why. Like if I was on the Pistons, I would be like 25 or something like that. Like something that has 2 numbers that takes up space.
Yeah, I could see it. I do like, I don't know, I like those 2 numbers, like you said. Getting to the double digits, I think, looks pretty good. But look, I'm no fashion guy, so I'll just have to take your word for it that it's the font that makes it do that. I have no idea.
I don't know. And I mean, maybe it's because most of the single digit ones are retired now anyways, and most players can't wear them.
Yeah,
so.
Very true. Very true. All right. Again, apologies, everybody. We said at the start of this show that it was going to be a shorter one because we didn't get a ton of questions. And then, an hour and 20 minutes or whatever later, after spending probably a good 35 to 40 minutes alone just on that one rotations question that we handled there, it went a little longer than we thought. So if you stuck with us, we really appreciate it. Sorry for lying to you. I didn't know at the time that it was a lie. It was a mistake, I promise.
Yeah, I really didn't know how deep we were going to go on that one. And hey, I'm happy we talked it through because we almost have preseason basketball and then the regular season.
I was having too much fun, Blake. I was having too much fun. I couldn't stop. I just lost track of time, and then It was bad hosting. It's my fault.
No. We went too far. We had to finish it out. We can't talk about the reserves in the second quarter without finishing out with who's going to close your game. So
exactly.
We finished
a cliffhanger for everybody. We can't do that to you guys.
Exactly. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining and listening. Reminder to, if you're watching us live on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, like the video on the Detroit Bad Boys channel, just to help support the show and help us move this thing along. We really appreciate it. And another reminder, you can call our phone line to ask a question and hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys again for the great questions and talking points tonight. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you.